What's up, everybody? We got 10 minutes here with Mr. Ryan Muckenhirn, Mark Boardman, and myself to talk about the 22-250 round. We discussed the 243 not long ago with Ryan, and a lot of people suggested and requested that we talk about the 22-250 of all cartridges. That's the one that I saw the most requests for. And so we're back in here. Ryan, can you give us like a brief breakdown, the etymology perhaps, of what even is the 22-250 Remington?
It's a commercialized wildcat, and a darn successful one at that.
Okay. What's the point of it? What's it similar to? What was it based off of?
In previous podcasts, we've talked about the golden era of metallic cartridge reloading, which was the 1950s to the 1960s and 70s, right? So post-World War II, guys coming back and like but like private reloading sessions popping up. We've got companies like Lee coming out with great reloading presses, and Hornady coming on the scene with commercially available ammunition and reloading components and things like this. And guys started taking existent cases that had been on the marketplace for some time. In this case, the 250 Savage. This is where the 250 and 22-250 comes from, which in its day was also a remarkable round. And we started fiddling with it. And towards, I want to say it was like 1965 is when it eventually got adopted or commercialized. But
Mark's fact-checking this on his printed out Wikipedia page.
And I'll be honest, it's reverse fact-checking because I'm seeing if this is correct, not if Ryan is correct.
Okay.
We've talked about it before. Necking something down seems to just make it better, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Why don't they just do that from the factory?
So let's actually back up. 250 Savage was a really cool rimless cartridge designed very early in the I want to say it was in the 1920s. The 250 Savage came out for use in the Savage 99, which was a cool lever action gun, had a rotary magazine, light years ahead of its time, propelled an 87 grain bullet at 3,000 feet per second. And it was called the 250 3000 Savage.
He's right.
You mean back in that day, they were propelling a cartridge at 3,000 feet per second?
So this schooled.
Look at that.
This schooled, at the time, the quarter boards that were available were like 25-35, which was a high step in cartridge for a lever gun. Savage comes out with the Model 99, and they chamber it in this hot rod 250 3000 Savage. Charles Newton, I believe, was the guy who did the 250 Savage.
It's Isaac Newton, but keep going.
Anyway.
That was the light bulb guy, right?
Oh.
22 caliber stuff, center fires anyways, had been on the scene already, and for some time with like 218B and similar stuff, 22 Hornet. And guys were figuring out like, hey, we can get a really cool flat shooting cartridge by necking this 250 3000 Savage down to 22 caliber. This is also coinciding with the availability of variable powered rifle scopes or higher powered rifle scopes. We're talking not like those old 8X Malcolms that were like the length of a 1870
externally adjusted,
right.
Yeah.
We're talking like the old Weaver K series, and Redfield's on the scene, and Leopold's on the scene. They're coming out with these great variable powered rifle scopes, and varminting became a thing. We're out hunting rock chucks and prairie dogs and coyotes and things like this, and it became a really popular pastime. And out of that, born the 22-250.
Okay, so that's kind of its main use then, is for primarily varminting and coyote and stuff like that.
Yep.
Okay. And back then, were people shooting this cartridge out of the Model 99, or were they shooting out of a whole variety of things that when somebody hot rods or wildcats a cartridge, they also have to kind of wildcat a gun too, right?
So the 22-250, not in the 99 at that time, more bolt guns. So Remington 700s, Winchester Model 70s, Ruger 77s later on, things like that. We really got into the good old days of quality bolt guns coming out.
I've got a little factoid here. If it is in fact true, in my online research, it says in 1963, the Browning Arms Company, great company, started to chamber its Browning high-power rifle in the 22-250. At the time, a Wildcat cartridge. This was a risky yet historical move on Browning's part, as there was no commercial production of the 22-250 at the time. So there wasn't an ammo company making ammo, but Browning said, we like it, we're going to make it.
There's enough weird dudes in their basement making this thing that we're going to, gosh darn it, make a commercially available rifle for it.
Awesome. That was a good rifle.
That's cool.
Yes.
And sorry, carry on.
Viability today, the 22-250 is one of the most popular coyote and prairie dog rounds out there. It offers enough over a 223 for a coyote hunter, especially when you're hunting like northern coyotes. They're larger, right? They're big critters. They get pretty hided up in the winter. The velocity advantage to a 22-250 over a 223 is pretty significant. And you can push heavier constructed bullets and that kind of thing at relatively high velocities, and it does a number on a coyote.
What's the actual cartridge size like compared to a 223? And is that the one that you compare it to most closely?
Yeah. It's closer to a 243 than it is a 223. So if you look at a 243 and a 22-250 side by side, they're very close. So
a 243 almost at times looks like, well, actually, you can neck that down because you can shoot like 55 grainers out of a 243.
Right, and there's a cartridge called a 22 Cheetah, which is a neck down 243, which is right. So it's some wild stuff. But if you look at like a 243, which is a 308 based case, compare it with a 22-250, which is a 250 Savage based case. We also recall the 300 Savage, which came from the 250 Savage, which bore the 308. Yeah, there's like a wild circle there.
A lot of numbers here.
Yeah.
Yes.
Ryan, is this correct, though? We're talking about it on this little chart here. It's saying a 55 grain bullet being pushed at 3,786 feet per second.
That's a stout load.
Holy smokes.
That'd be a stout load.
It doesn't... Okay.
Yeah, that's moving.
But is that average, or is that somebody that's got that thing like super crazy hot?
I mean, I'd have to look at some load data. I actually have never owned a 22-250 because
why?
Well,
it seems so up your like your alley. It's like small, and it seems like it would be something that's very like fine whiskey or something like that.
The 22-250 is more like the White Claw of.
Oh,
whoa.
no.
Yeah.
Comments below.
You know what?
Oh.
Because I shoot a 243. So if I'm going to subject myself to that level of recoil in that class of case, I'm just going to shoot a 243. And then I'm going to take advantage of it.
What's recoil like on a 22-250 compared to a 243?
A little bit less, but we're pretty close. They're both well over a 223.
Yeah.
So,
more recoil than a 223?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. But both are a substantial gain over a 223. So when I was...
Well, either way, and everything's all relative. We're still talking about something that's like probably even suitable for beginner shooters.
Oh, definitely.
As far as recoil goes, it's not going to, you're not talking about getting put on your butt.
I wish I'd been here for that 243 talk, because talk about, in my opinion, an unsung cartridge. The original 6mm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We discussed that. We're on 22-250 mark. Okay?
I'll say this, though. In the time I've been around being a reloader and then working in this industry and being like an enthusiastic hunter and outdoors person, 22-250 has gotten a little bit of flack.
Really?
In what way?
People are forgetting what it's capable of when you load it with a really appropriate bullet. So like our friends at Hornady, our friends at Barnes, our friends at Nosler make these real tough bullets in 22 caliber, and they make them specifically for like deer and antelope hunters. Mm-hmm. And a 70 grain Barnes or a Hornady GMX or a Nosler AccuBond in a 22-250 would be a lightning bolt on antelope and deer.
Right.
What kind of twist rate do you need on a barrel to spin something that big?
You're looking at like a 1 in 9, 1 in 8.
And are you burning barrels out fairly consistently on these things, similar to like people do with 6.5 Creedmoors versus 308s, because it's hot?
I wouldn't say, go load your 22-250 up with some 70, 75 grainers and then go take it to the prairie dog town and expect it to last as long as perhaps your 55 grain load.
Yeah.
But, for application and use, if you wanted a very light recoiling, hyper accurate, hyper velocity deer and antelope round, a 22-250 with an appropriate bullet is not a terrible choice.
No.
With 20 seconds left, what's the long range capability on a 22-250? Obviously, it's a small bullet.
Yep.
So it's going to get pushed around a lot.
I know a lot of like diehard coyote hunters that's a 400-yard gun for them. for a coyote rig. And if you load it with the right bullet, like the long range capability of a 22-250 is amazing with a high BC, like 90 grain bullet, 1,000 yards. Have fun. Not for hunting, but for target.
90 grain.
Yeah.
For as long as I can remember, and I've been into guns, when people talk about a varmint round,
22-250. Absolutely.
But like you're saying, other apps too.
True.
I like it. Well, there's 10 minutes, folks. Thanks for listening. Let us know what you think about the 22-250 and if there are other cartridges you'd like to hear about. Loved hearing those suggestions. So hit us up on Instagram and anywhere else you can get a hold of us. Thanks for listening, everybody. Happy hunting and shooting. Bye.
See ya. Bye.
Fantastic.
How was that 10 minutes?
Oh,
doesn't it go so fast?
This is an interesting cartridge.
It's a very interesting cartridge.
I mean, I didn't even spend very much time looking stuff up, and I'm like, oh, here's one for you, Jim. Here's one for you. Hold on.
I'm liking it more and more because it's a little bit odd.
Military acceptance. This is from the wiki. Both the British Special Air Services
SAS
and the Australian Special Air Service Regiment used Tikka M55 sniper rifles chambered in 22-250 for urban counter-terrorism duties in the 1980s.
Suppression on one of those? I'd imagine. I mean, you can suppress it, but it's still going to make a.
Oh yeah,
it goes through the air.
It's not.
But it's a small bullet too, so it's not going to make a gigantic, sound barrier clap.
It really is a pretty special little cartridge.
That's cool.
In this here, and again, this is what I'm basing all my knowledge of this cartridge on. They compared it a lot to the 220 Swift, but they were saying due to the extreme shoulder angle, they thought the powder burn was more efficient, as well as you could get a more diverse powder load in there, and you could also use less powder to kind of get maybe a similar result.
So the Swift, or the 22-250 is to the Swift as the 308 is to the 30-06.
Okay.
So if you look at a Swift.
Oh, it's just like the bigger, less refined brother.
Yep. So, 06, enter 1954 T65 cartridge, which eventually becomes a 308.
Gotcha.
Okay, so it does effectively the same thing, plus minus 100 feet per second, in a smaller case, more compact, more efficient design. The Swift monster truck of 22 centerfires, refinement, the 22-250.
Swift is Frankenstein.
Yeah, it's cool. It's a weird cartridge. It's a semi-rimmed cartridge. So like when we say a rimless cartridge.
Yeah, what the heck are you talking about here?
So we have the case body right here. We have the case web. We have the extractor groove, and then we have the rim. And to say that we're rimless means that if we drew a straight line off the rim forward, we would not be above the body. Okay, so it would be parallel or slightly recessed. Then we have what's called a rebated rim, which is a rim that's notably inset to the case web, which is this part here. So a semi-rim design like a 220 Swift or its parent case, the 6mm Lee Navy, will have a slightly raised rim relative to its body. So what happens on that setup, though, is if you load those in a magazine, that rim can snag other rims or extractor grooves and create a feeding debacle. So the Swift, I had a Swift, it was a cool round. Very antiquated, like old. 22-250, remarkable improvement. We went to a modern case design, stronger case, beefier brass, better brass life, more efficient relative to like powder column size and quantity compared to the Swift. Did the same thing the Swift did, effectively. I actually know a guy who shot F-class with a 22-250.
Really?
Yep, and he did. He shot like at the time I want to say it was an 80.5 grain burger. And seated out on his toenails, like had a special single shot rifle made for it, and he mopped the floor with that gun. No recoil, zero whatsoever. And the wind, that BC is so high on that little projectile because it's such a small diameter and such a long bullet. He did real well with that.
That is cool.
Yeah, it's a neat round, and it does offer like probably 200 and change over the 223, but does so like this is 30 grains of powder tops, and a 22-250s into the 40s. So yeah, my pet 223 loads 25.5 grains of powder. So It's a big step up. But cool round.
I like it.
Might have to get something.